Maining a champion is one of the best ways to climb in League, but most champions either take way too long to master, or they require so much effort to do well on that you're basically playing League on hard mode for absolutely no reason. So today, we're going to be breaking down the easiest champions to climb on for every role this patch, and to make this list, they only needed two things for us. They had to be strong right now, and have such a low barrier to entry that you can pick them up for the very first time and immediately start winning games. Because we believe that League shouldn't be as complicated as everybody makes it out to be. Climbing isn't about putting hundreds of hours into a champion, studying the crazy strategies, or mastering the theoretical macro nonsense where you're expected to just pause the game, analyze 20 different factors, and then make the perfect decision somehow. All that stuff sounds great in theory, but let's be honest here, none of it actually ever works in your games, does it? That's because the ELO that you're playing in is a completely different game, and we get that, which is why we, in our brand new Season 16 Essentials courses, focus on teaching you practical fundamentals for every role that aren't just easy to apply, but are proven to get you climbing fast, as we do what nobody else can. Take players just like you, find out what's holding you back from climbing, and build our content from the ground up around what actually gets results for the average player, you. And listen, we're so confident it works that we back it all up with a rank up guarantee. Climb at least 5 divisions while actively using our service, or you get every penny back, plus a 30-day refund change of mind policy on top of that. So there's literally zero risk. Access your exclusive discount code using the link in the description or pinned comment below and start your climb today. So starting off in the top lane, we have a champion that I honestly feel like I have to apologize for including at this point, because every time we make one of these lists, we always tell ourselves, surely we could leave Garen out in this one this time, right? And somehow, well, here we are, talking about Garen. And honestly, it's just not even fair that a champion that's this easy to pick up and do well on can be this strong in the meta right now, and not including it would be a complete injustice to the game. Your lane phase is super solid, as you can just walk up level 1 with E, and if your opponent tries to trade, just spin on them and the wave to get priority. You stat check most other bruisers and juggernauts if you just trade around your W damage reduction, and you do enough sustained damage to completely decimate tanks. Even in Garen's hardest matchups, which is most ranged top laners, you can very easily survive thanks to the healing your passive provides. You can completely one-shot squishies and teamfights in just a single silence, and you're ridiculously strong in the side lane as you clear waves immediately, and it's practically impossible to catch you. I mean, really, Garen is just about as good as it gets right now if you want an easy top laner. But now the hardest part about Garen is just building correctly, as there's a few different variations you could go by. The standard all-purpose build that you're going to hear on the internet is just this Conqueror page here with a Stridebreaker rush into Phantom Dancer with either Swiftness boots or plated steel caps. From here though, you could go for more bruiser items like Shojin, Death's Dance, and Sterix, or further into crit with items like Mortal Reminder and Infinity Edge, or even grab some tankier items like Force of Nature and Dead Man's Plate, depending on what you need. Against ranged champions though, you can instead default to this Storm Surge page, where with Nimbus Cloak and Celerity you can close the gap pretty easily, and with Second Wind, it's just going to help you through the early levels. Something also worth trying out though is definitely going to be Lethality Garen. Rush Stridebreaker as normal, but then grab Ghostblade. The movement speed from Ghostblade is going to help you get in range to slow them with Stridebreaker, making it impossible for them to get away. From here though, add in Voltaic and Deadman's and Mortal Reminder, and you're going to become absolutely impossible to deal with. But we have a full in-depth breakdown of all 3 of these builds, as well as when you would want to take them on our completely free build site over at skillcap.com/lol/guides. There's even some tips and tricks for how you should be aiming to play the lane phase and our handwritten challenger insights. Be sure to check all that out after the video. For our second top lane pick though, we have a champion that has seen a huge resurgence, all because of one item. That of course is Teemo. Now, love him or hate him, Teemo has always been one of those champions that can often be a little bit more annoying than he is strong. But the addition of Static Shiv here has made him not only stronger, but a whole lot easier to play. As everybody knows by now, Teemo already has an amazing early game. Into most melee top laners and even a surprising amount of ranged ones, you can just walk up, abuse your range, blind their autos, and make lane absolutely miserable all the way from level 1. But the problem with Teemo has always been what happens after lane, because in the mid to late game, your main value comes from your shrooms. But at the same time, time, you also needed them to reliably clear and push waves. Shiv completely changed that. Since it applies your E poison to the entire wave, you can basically one-shot waves without having to waste your ultimate. Not only that, but your damage in teamfights, it's absolutely absurd if enemies stack up. The most important part of playing Teemo, though, is just thinking about where the next play is gonna happen and pre-placing shrooms around that area, which is easier than it sounds because it's often just gonna be an objective. For the build, rush Shiv as your first item into Liantris, and then grab either Malignance first for more shrooms and objective control, or Shadow Flame for just more raw damage, but you're definitely gonna want both anyway, capping out your build with a Death Cap and Void Staff. Now, as for the rune page, we do highly suggest this press the attack page to make your laning even more obnoxious with Bone Plating and Overgrowth as your secondaries for in case enemies ever get on top of you. Moving over to jungle now, our first pick is a champion that has undergone so many changes in different builds that it's honestly kind of impossible to keep up with. But after months of experimentation, Shyvana's strongest build has finally been solved, and as a result, she has become one of the easiest and one of the strongest junglers to really climb with this patch, having upwards of a 55% win rate in gold and below, while also maintaining super high win rates and high elo as well. Shyvana, it's definitely still more of a farm-heavy jungler, but her early game is surprisingly a lot better than it was pre-rework, where with the slow from your E and movement speed from your W, you can actually look for ganks at the end of a full clear. Your main goal is just going to be to farm until you hit level 6, but don't panic if the enemy jungler out-pressures you early though and starts impacting the map, because the second you hit level 6, you quite literally become unbeatable in any small-scale skirmishes, and then continue just to scale through the mid and late game where your game plan still remains exactly the same. Power farm your camps, then look for gank or play around an objective whenever you have enough fury for your ultimate. Now, as for your build, you're going to want to select this precision tree here with either press the attack against squishier team comps or Conqueror against the more tanky ones, with Free Boots, Cosmic Insight as your secondary. The best items right now consist of a Trinity Force Rush for a super strong early game power spike, and a Spear of Shojin to increase your dueling potential. In most games, you're going to want to take Gluttonous Greaves as your boot of choice, which once stacked gives you a ton of Omnivamp, making you near unkillable. From there, you can either go Death's Dance against AD heavy compositions or Sundered Sky for even more dueling potential, rounding out your build with items like Sterix, Randuin's, Riftmaker, or Jack Show, depending on what you need. But if farming isn't your thing, our next pick is definitely one of the best gankers in the whole game. That is Rammus. Now, what makes Rammus so strong right now is that he basically hard counters all but one of the 10 most popular junglers across every single elo right now, beating them with ease, literally with zero mechanics required. Now, we did feature him recently in our last Easiest Champs video, and back then, he was the third highest win rate jungler overall. Now, though, he's the highest in the game across all ranks at nearly 53%. So, you absolutely should cash in on this before he gets nerfed. We all know it's going to come. Aside from countering every meta jungler in the game right now, though, what makes Rammus so good is that he plays really similar to Nunu, and that you can have a huge impact in the game very early on with your ganks, be it from river or even just down a lane, abusing the home guard changes to pull off nearly impossible to avoid lane ganks. Now, typically junglers that are strong gankers early game do need to have an impact or they just fall off. Rammus doesn't suffer the same fate though, as you absolutely will become a ridiculously tanky frontliner for your team as long as you're playing around the cooldown of your W and Aftershock. And a quick tip right here, don't always look to engage with your R. In a lot of cases, it's actually good to save as a tool to disengage. For your build, rush a Bramble for even more damage on your taunt and W, and then grab a Bammy Cinder. The combination of these two items is what's going to give you enough damage to clear efficiently and also be a threat to ganks. Then work towards completing Thornmail and Deadman's into Protoplasm, which is completely busted on Rammus as the healing scales based off resistances, so if you have your W and Aftershock up, it basically heals you to full, rounding out the build by picking up Jack Show and then turning your Bammies into either Sunfire or Hollow Radiance depending on what resist you need. As for runes, we do suggest this Aftershock page with Alacrity and Triumph, and if you are really looking to take your jungle game to the next level this season, please check out our world record jungle clears for every champion. Each clear comes with helpful subtitles breaking down all the hidden tricks, the ability timings, all the small optimizations most players they completely miss, so you can clear faster, get to fights earlier, and massively improve your efficiency. Moving over to the mid lane now. Our first pick is a champion that's received a ton of indirect buffs over the last few patches that he's ended up as one of the best mid laners right now. That, of course, is Veigar. In a recent patch, the mid lane quest was changed to now give you bonus AD and AP, which was then buffed to 8% not too long ago. And as we all know, Veigar is a champion that gets a ton of AP for free from his passive, so so he ends up benefiting a whole lot more than most other mid laners with these changes. Your goal on Veigar is obviously just to stack your passive as much as possible, but this doesn't mean you should avoid trading. Especially at level 1, you outrange and outtrade most other mid laners, and you still get 1 AP for hitting champions, so going for aggressive trades early is a great way to get yourself a favorable state once your opponent reaches level 2 or 3 and becomes stronger. Truthfully though, the hardest part of Veigar is the fact that he's a short-range mage with 0 mobility, which means using your E and positioning correctly is going to be your biggest challenge. But once you get to the mid and late game with enough stacks, you can basically just one-shot any non-tank in a single combo, or even just a Q into R in some cases. And even if you're not landing your E's perfectly though, it's still an amazing zoning tool to peel for yourself and your backline in team fights, especially around objectives and chokes. Now as for your runes, this first strike page is perfect as you can abuse the range of your Q to earn yourself some free gold while also saving money on boots, while cut down does help get them into the execute range of your ultimate sooner. For items, rush a tier and then rush Hextech Rocket Belt, as the extra health and mobility is exactly what Veigar needs. Then upgrade your tier into Seraphs, and then grab Deathcap 3rd into Crypto Bloom with either Zhonya's or Banshees depending on what you need. Now as for your boots, Sorks are the default, but defensive boots like Mercs or plated steel caps do work wonders in the difficult matchups. Our second pick here is something just a little bit more spicy, and that is Diana. Diana recently received a small buff to her W shield, which it might not sound like much at first, but for a champion that was already strong, has resulted in a really nice jump in her win rate. And best of all, she's really easy to learn, because despite being an assassin, she's surprisingly durable. She can survive pretty much any matchup and even counters most other assassins, while also scaling into an absolute beast in the mid to late game. As you're often going to be up against ranged champions, you're going to want to play the first couple of levels fairly safe and preserve health, picking up what CS you can while farming and poking with your Q and soaking up any damage with your now buffed W. But once you hit level 3, everything, and I mean everything, changes, and you can start to play insanely aggressive, as if you hit a single Q on your lane opponent, you can dash in with E, pop your W, and proc Electrocute, which outtrades practically every other mid laner. Now, one little tip for Diana here, straight from our free builds page, is that when going for the Q into E combo, you can E instantly after throwing it, as even if your Q hits after your E, you're still going to get the cooldown reset. But what makes Diana so strong is that she can basically do everything, because you can 1v1 almost any mid laner. You become incredibly hard to match in this side lane. And when you combine that with how fast she melts turrets with her passive, Diana becomes one of the best split-pushing mid laners in the whole game. But even if split pushing really isn't working out in your game, she's also insane in team fights too, because one good ultimate can instantly win the entire fight by itself. So whether you need to side lane, you need to assassinate carries, or completely take over a team fight, Diana really does do it all. For build, pick up Storm Surge into Shadow Flame, and then Deathcap and Zhonya's, finishing off your build with Void Staff. But you could also opt for Lich Bane first if you do think you're going to be side laning more. For the build, grab this Electrocute page with Mana Flow and Transcendence to help with your early mana issues. Against melee champions though, swap to Bone Plating and Shield Bash instead, as this is going to always ensure you win trades. Moving into the bot lane now, our first pick is one of the best and easiest ADCs you can possibly play this patch, and that is Senna. What makes her so perfect for a list like this is that she basically lets you cheat a lot of what normally makes ADC so difficult. You have built-in sustain from your Q, self-peel and escape from your E and W, really long range in the mid to late game, which makes positioning a whole lot easier, and since your attack speed is naturally a little bit lower, you're not going to be required to orb walk at 900 APM just to survive and deal damage. Lane phase is also incredibly forgiving, as again, you have that self-sustain. Just avoid taking extended trades and just poke with auto Q constantly and try to build up souls as you scale into a monster. A great trick a lot of Senna OTPs and pro players have been abusing right now is to also start Doran's Helm. This just makes trading and surviving the early lane phase a whole lot easier, so definitely give it a go if you're struggling in lane right now. But what's really pushed Senna to the top this patch is Static Shiv. Senna's one weakness has always been her lack of wave clear, but with Shiv, you can now Q the wave as it comes in, auto once, and instantly get your Q back, letting you clear waves super quick. And if Shiv bounces to any champions, you only need one more auto or Q to collect a soul. There's even a special interaction where enemies hit past the first target with Q Q are going to also give you souls. So in team fights, if your enemies are grouped, 1 Q can give you a ton of stacks. As for your runes and items, start Doran's Helm, as we mentioned, and then get a Tear and any component from Static Shiv on your first back. This will get you to 5 Jack of all trade stacks immediately. From here, complete your Shiv ASAP. Once you get your free boots from Magical Footwear, all you need is one singular glowing mote to reach 10 stacks for an insane power spike. Then, complete Black Cleaver into Manamune, into Phantom Dancer, and then either GA for some survivability or IE for more damage, depending on what you need. Taking this DFT page with Jack of all trades and Magical Footwear as your secondaries. Now, we couldn't have the easiest champions to climb video without featuring a mage in the bot lane, and currently, there is nothing that comes even remotely close to our next pick, Brand. And a huge reason why that is that he abuses Deathfire Touch for a ridiculous amount of damage. The problem Brand has in mid lane, though, is that he gets heavily outranged by a lot of other mages, but in bot lane, that weakness, it absolutely disappears, as you can actually outrange most ADCs in the game. And since there's naturally more players in the bot lane, Brand's AoE damage only gets even more disgusting. And once you get Rylai's, all you really need to do is press E, and the target is basically slowed for an eternity, which makes landing your Q and landing your W effortless. Then, once you get into the mid to late game, Brand becomes an absolute team fight monster with his insane AoE damage with Liandry's DFT and Rylai's spread onto every single target, that even if you're behind, it's impossible not to have a huge impact with him. For runes and items, grab this DFT page here with Legend Haste and Presence of Mind as your secondaries. Rush Blackfire Torch into Rylai's, then grab Liandry's third. After that, go Shadow Flame against lower MR teams or Bloodletter's Curse if your team has multiple AP threats. Then round out the build with Zhonya's or Deathcap, depending on what you need. And one quick tip right here with him, if the enemy team has any real healing, picking up an early Oblivion Orb and just sitting on it, it's super valuable. Now, if you're not abusing our next support already, what in the world are you doing right now? Last patch, we saw a big shakeup in the meta with Riot nerfing a ton of enchanter items and runes while buffing tank supports. But our next support didn't just survive the nerfs, she got stronger, Seraphine. And if you're looking to carry games from the support role, well, she's just about as good as it gets right now. Seraphine basically plays lane like a poke mage, with both Q and E being long range, easy to land, and dealing really high damage, which compared to most other enchanters gives you a ton of agency and potential to win your lane. Then, rather than falling off like a lot of poke mages would, she scales into one of the best late game supports, period, as your W AoE shielding and healing in team fights is just out of this world strong, and not to mention with just a single ultimate, you're able to completely win a fight solo. Now in lane, a mistake a lot of Seraphine players make is starting Q. You want to grab E instead, as not only does this do more damage, but it also roots for you and your ADCs to squeeze in more autos for an even more favorable trade. What's also great about Seraphine is that there's a ton of diversity with your build depending on how you like to play and the composition that you're going to be facing. But now if you want a more carry-oriented setup, especially into heavy melee teams, you could instead run this Comet page and rush Rylai's into the new Imperial Mandate, taking Bloodsong as your support item. And yeah, I know, Bloodsong Seraphine does sound kind of troll right now, but it actually works surprisingly well because thanks to the bonus range from your passive, Seraphine can weave in autos way more safely than most enchanters. And since Bloodsong applies a damage amp, which then stacks with the damage amp from Imperial Mandate, you end up adding a ton of bonus damage for yourself and your team over the course of a game. The full build is Rylai's first, which makes your E always root into Imperial Mandate, then Hylia, then Moonstone, while maxing Q into W into E. So with this setup, you get a ton of ability haste from more E's and ultimates, permanent roots as Rylai's is completed, huge team-wide damage amp from Bloodsong and Mandate, and you still scale into a late-game enchanter with Hylia and Moonstone. That said, if you're wanting to play more of a conventional support though, take this Aerie page, grab a tier on your first back, and then rush Hylia into Whispering Circlet, and from here you can default into Moonstone and then Dawncore. But you can also pick out Michael's or even Staff of Flowing Water depending on what you need or if you have multiple AP threats. Our next pick though is for those of you that prefer melee supports, Leona. Leona right now is easily one of the best and easiest engaged champions to climb with right now. What makes her absolutely perfect for a list like this is that she's just so much easier easier to execute than most other engaged supports. As with champions like Thresh, or really even Rell, finding the right angle can be really difficult. You have to have a perfect combo or to land a hook. But with Leona, your engage is super straightforward. If they step too far forward, you just E onto them. If they're out of range, you can just straight the fight from a distance with your ultimate, and then just chain your CC together for an easy kill. She's also insanely forgiving, as between your W, Aftershock, and all the durability from the tank support items, Leona becomes impossibly hard to kill, even if you're diving into the middle of the enemy team. So if you're looking for an easy engage support that can carry lane, roam around the map, and even 1v9 teamfights, Leona honestly does it all right now. For your runes, grab this Aftershock page with Hex Flash and Cosmic Insight to constantly threaten engages from the bush in lane, then rush either Vandal Pipes if you have an auto attack based ADC, or Locket if you don't. Then grab either Knight's Vow to protect a fed carry, or Protoplasm Harness for a little more survivability if you're solo frontline. Now, as for your support item, default to Celestial in most games, but Bloodsong is going to be a great alternative if you're ahead. But we do have a full breakdown of when to take every single item, as well as some tips and tricks for every champion featured in this guide on our completely free build site over at www.skillcap.com/lol/guides. And there you have it. Those are the 10 easiest champions to climb with this season. If you're looking for more information on how to play any of these champions or builds featured in this guide, be sure to check out our Smurf commentaries page, where our challenger coaches, they walk you through every stage of the game step by step, and that's on top of our full library of expertly curated courses designed for players of literally all skill levels, whether you're a beginner or whether you're a seasoned veteran. We have everything that you need to climb this season, which you can gain access to right now by using the exclusive discount code in the description below. Thank you all so much for watching. Good luck with your ranked climbs, and we'll see ya in the next one.